Well, hello out there, Internet. Hope you all are doing well. Welcome to our as yet completely untitled podcast where we give half baked life advice and gear talk and other things just to make that time mowing a lawn or folding your laundry or going on a long drive a little bit more bearable because we're going to entertain you for the next 40 minutes to an hour or so and see where that takes us, okay? We have a special guest today. Uh, we're going to do a little appeal to authority and let Mr. Rhodes Bailey tell us about himself. Rhodes is a lawyer and a rocker. He's not a blues lawyer. I've never heard him play. I've never heard him, play Crossroads for 20 minutes straight. But Rhodes is going to give us a little bit of his background, and we thought he would be a really useful guest to have on here because you've done a lot, man. I mean, you have been in the legal sphere in a whole bunch of different capacities that I think are relevant to rockers. Now, we're going to say first and foremost, before we get into the deep dive here, we are not advocating for any of you doing any crime. Okay? Drugs are bad, okay? Okay? Crime is bad. Don't do drugs. Don't commit crimes. Don't be bad people. With that out of the way.
But sometimes trouble finds you.
Trouble
right?
finds you. Yes. Yeah. Trouble finds you. Yeah. And what do you do? And we're going to have to talk about, first off, I want to let Mr. Rhodes Bailey introduce himself at the risk of almost going Ali G. So when did you become a lawyer?
Well, I became a lawyer in 2007. Wow. That's when I graduated from law school. So I guess I've been doing this for about 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so what did you do when you first came out of law school? What was the first?
The first thing I did right when I came out of law school was I joined the Public Defender's Office in Richland County, which is the biggest county in South Carolina, population-wise. About Charleston's probably past us or about to pass us now. I did that for about off and on for about 10 years. I worked in a firm that defended some civil cases. Civil is when you get sued or sue somebody. I went back to the Public Defender's Office. I became chief litigator there and head of the violent crime team, which was fun. You know, a lot of courtroom intrigue and good times and good people that care about those that are indigent, can't afford lawyers. Mm-hmm. Then I went to a firm where I did personal injury for about 3 years. I kind of like the full package. I like being able to do a little bit of everything, and I did a lot of personal injury type cases. Some of them car accidents, some other things. And then I started my own firm, Rhodes Bailey Law, about somewhere in between a year and a half ago. And so I handle criminal defense. I handle, people that get in the car accident or injured, in various places. And I like to be kind of a one-man operation that can control what I'm handling. I can take what I want to. I can do what I want to. And it's nice for you.
That's outstanding. So Public Defender's Office, 10 years there. And you saw the whole gamut of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like
super fun. Yeah, and exciting. Never boring.
But when I say like the full gamut, you saw everything from like juvenile misdemeanor stuff to violent crime and all these things. And so give us a quick rundown of how is it being a public defender in these very demanding cases? How is it wildly different than Law and Order? Which is what people, I think, presume these kinds of cases are going to be.
Well, first of all, in Law and Order, I guess, the good guys are kind of the cops and the prosecutors.
Propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard the term propaganda a lot, and a lot of times the defense lawyer is like a seedy little guy and stuff. But
who's the guy at Billions who he seemed like who they
Paul
were
Giamatti.
They're always trying to cast a Paul Giamatti
to be like sleazy and bald and sneaky. That's TV type stuff.
Oh, yeah. The worst I remember was in 24. They had the bald guy from Sex and the City, like the Evan Handler guy, whatever, playing the Amnesty International lawyer as a snarky villain or whatever.
They can't match their clothes. And stuff. Well, I will say that the people that are usually attracted to the Public Defender's Office usually are, a lot of them are very motivated by social justice, by politics, by their own sort of personal philosophy. And it really is kind of the law office of underdogs, of rockers. You go in there young, you're very much in a stick it to the man sort of mind frame. And, I started back in, George W. Bush's presidency. So it was a different world. People were still going to prison for longer periods of time for drugs and things. And I was still young and full of piss and vinegar. So everything was a fight, right? Over time, you learn to pick your fights better. You learn to speak softly, carry a big stick. But a lot of people come into the public defender's office. You learn a lot really fast. I've done everything from double parking to double murders. Yeah.
Wow.
And although you can come into a job smart, there's nothing like experience. Now we're in middle age. You know how it is. You've got both. You've got time, you've got experience, and public defenders have to handle a large amount of cases in a relatively short amount of time. So it's kind of like dog years. Language immersion, where people go abroad and they actually learn how to speak Spanish or French or whatever. It's like a legal immersion. You've got kids come out of law school, and within 6 months to a year, they already sort of become these like battle. They've seen so much action. And you're the underdog. You're never as well funded as the prosecution is. There's kind of a default of a lot of jurors to think, oh well, this person got arrested, therefore they must be guilty of something. Attitudes have also changed substantially since I was a young lawyer. I would say two very big cultural things. One was the Serial podcast.
Yeah.
You remember where Adnan Syed, I think it was his name. We could have a whole podcast about that. And then another one was Making a Murderer on Netflix.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, happened was body cameras. When body cameras became ubiquitous, something about this big on a police officer, all of a sudden, regular Americans said, oh, maybe, what this officer is saying isn't always the truth. And there became a real skepticism. There's also skepticism of, that came from, crime shows, CSI, now I want to see all this forensic evidence. But, it's sort of even the playing field. Now, I want to say, first of all, I know plenty of great people in law enforcement. I know plenty of wonderful prosecutors. That was just never really my bag. I wasn't really, I'm not of the hall monitor personality. I'm more worried about the guy or girl that might be a victim of overreach of government in that kind of situation. And I was always attracted to the underdog. And I think that is kind of when it comes to like music and art, I think that you'll see a lot of, you don't see a lot, no offense, guys, but you don't see a lot of like rock and roll prosecutors, right? Nobody wants to cut loose by putting guys in jail for property crimes. Maybe they do. Maybe they do.
Right.
Society's got to have them, but that's not the band I usually want to go see.
Yeah. So who typically would be assigned to the public defender's office? For example, that just to give a little clarity to this, you were frequently representing people who, I know some states would have like a rotation of law firms that would partner with the county, and then they'd be assigned these people kind of almost pro bono and things. But then other states would have, or other counties would have a full public defender's office in the event people couldn't afford a lawyer.
You've done your research. That's right. We have a public defender system here in South Carolina, and many places do. But obviously, you have a right to an attorney under the Gideon case and the Sixth Amendment. You have a right to everybody. The Fifth and the Sixth Amendment both deal with your rights when it comes to court. But usually, it's people that just can't afford lawyers. And most people that are arrested for crimes, the large majority of them are people that can't afford lawyers, and that's a variety of reasons. Some people are turned to crime, sometimes petty crime, because they can't afford food or things. Some of them it's because of drug addiction. Some of them, though, it's just because those are the areas of town where policing is the most active. Not to generalize, but police are more likely to stop a kid that fits a certain description in a certain neighborhood than they are, the fraternity guy in the expensive SUV who's in like a nicer neighborhood. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that's so it's typically people that can't afford lawyers.
Yes.
But
and there is a bias. I think we like if you and I go running down the street in a hoodie, people are just going to assume we're late for something.
Right.
Like a lot of people, but that benefit of the doubt isn't granted to everyone.
Right. And sometimes it's racial, sometimes it's dress. Sometimes, a lot of our friends that are musicians that are younger, they look more like somebody that police might be inclined to pull over. And we can kind of get into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you were then in private practice working for a law firm and you were still handling a wide range of cases, mostly it sounded like a lot more of the property stuff and a lot more of civil litigation and things.
Well, occasionally you get something interesting. We had a strip club wrongful death, and that was kind of interesting. Yeah, but a lot of it is just you're defending, Bill. And I did that for a couple of years. Not all strip clubs. I think it was just one or two strip clubs. But I was basically hired by the insurance company to defend people that had insurance. One of them was a man had been deceased in a struggle with, or died in a struggle with bouncers. They were trying to get him to leave and he didn't want to leave.
Oh.
Yeah. Then there were other cases like, dram shop cases, people that maybe or allegedly overserved at a restaurant and they drive somewhere else and somebody gets hurt. Did some of those. But then you also just did your run-of-the-mill car accident cases. I did that for a couple of years, and I went back to the public defender's office. That's called insurance defense. When you sue somebody, usually it's companies or people that ideally they would have insurance, and that's who foots the bill. When somebody hits you with your car, they have insurance. Usually, the juries aren't allowed to know this at the time, but usually it's insurance companies that pay a verdict. And then I went back to the public defender's office for a while, and then for about, I guess starting about 2021, I was a plaintiff's lawyer, which I enjoyed because, again, it was usually the underdog. It was usually you're the underdog and you're up against the companies or you're up against insurance companies or corporations. And I just enjoyed that more.
Yeah.
It's more sort of, and with my personal, philosophies. I know plenty of people that do insurance defense that are wonderful lawyers and they do a lot of good. And but I've handled a lot of stuff. I mean, doing this for almost 20 years, you just see a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like you see a lot of different kind of bar rooms when you're playing a lot of types of gigs.
Yeah. You've seen some dives and you've seen some great stages.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about some of the stuff that the rockers run in.
Okay, this is great. Hazards.
I like these.
Rock and roll hazards.
Rock and roll,
maybe hip hop hazards.
Yeah, imperial entanglements, all of these things. So what are some of the frequent things that the rock and roller will run into that are trouble, and how should they navigate that when trouble finds them?
Well, that's great. So I want to talk about police stops. And usually a stop is, you're driving somewhere, maybe you're coming home from a gig late at night, and law enforcement stops you.
Yeah.
Now, they're supposed to have a reason to stop you. Laws differ from place to place, but generally a lot of your general privacy rights, your search rights, you can trace a lot of these rights right back to the United States Supreme Court rulings. So let's say you're in the car, you're driving, and then you get pulled. Now, we don't even necessarily know yet, but I want to give some really simple advice. One, be polite, okay? There's an old saying that says you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. Meaning I might be able to help you with the charges. I might even get them dismissed. But if you're rude to the officer, he might be more inclined, to have less patience with you, might be more inclined to arrest you. But so when the officer talks to you, be polite, look them in the eye, yes, sir, no, sir, generally. They can ask you questions. They can ask you to see your license. They can ask you where you've been going. If it's pretty basic questions, I don't have problems with you talking to them. I'm coming from here, I'm coming from there.
Now, this sort of contrasts with some stuff I've heard, because sometimes I hear like, there's almost like these pre-programmed things like, I'm not under any obligation to tell you about my day. I just feel like sometimes that it's unnecessarily confrontational. But
again, everybody has their different style.
Yeah.
I usually say be polite, but that doesn't mean that you have to give them any real substantive statements. It also doesn't. Also, you don't have to consent to a searches.
Yeah.
But the number one thing is, well, first of all, I want to backtrack. Let's say the police officer comes. Let's say it's nighttime. Let's say they pull you. First of all, stay in the car, and I advise you turn on your internal cab light. Okay, turn it on, because and when police officers are hurt, it's usually because they don't know who's in the driver's seat or who they're pulling. They've got to radio it in. Turn on the light. They see that from where they're at, and they know immediately that there's less to be sort of concerned about.
Interesting.
Just sort of put your hands on the wheel. Some people say get your registration out ahead of time. I would say wait on that, because they don't really know what they're looking at. Maybe you're a big burly guy. Maybe you got really long hair.
Yeah.
Maybe they have no idea, who you are, what type of person you are. I don't judge people by long hair. I had it. My draft dodging father had it.
I had it when I
I'm losing it now. I love it now. But I would advise, first of all, turn on your interior light. Okay, assuming you don't have anything incriminating in the car, we can talk about that later. Put your hands on the wheel, and then when he comes over, roll down the window when he says. Don't do anything ahead of him asking you, or roll down the window when he comes and wait for him and say, officer, you can say, I've got my license and registration in the glove box. If you're fine, I'll grab that now. I mean, that's typically what I advise.
Yeah.
Because some officers are more nervous, some of them are newer, some don't really know how to deal with you, and they might judge the way you're dressed. They might judge that you might be a little tired. Maybe you're coming from a gig or a late night work shift or something, and they like to make assumptions.
Yeah.
So be polite. Look them in the eye, be friendly, and be kind of professional. So that's my first bit of advice. Now, do not consent to a search. Whatever you do, just say politely, no, no, officer, I don't want to consent to a search. If they ask you questions about drugs or anything like that, just say, I don't feel comfortable answering questions without my lawyer. Now, they might get mad, they might intimidate you, they might say they're going to throw you in. But the minute let's say you have been drinking, first of all, breathalyzers are in many ways, junk science. There's a lot of problems with them, and they're also field tests. Let's talk specifically DUIs, driving under the influence, or DWI. There are two ways that they can prosecute a DUI, or driving under the influence. One is by a field sobriety test. They say, get out of the car, and they'll hold a pin to your eyes. They'll get you to step 1 foot in front of another, which is a completely unnatural thing. Mm-hmm. They might have you stand weird ways.
You recite the alphabet backwards.
Yeah,
stuff that you don't do anyway in your day-to-day life.
No, I want you to say politely, officer, I'd prefer not to take a field sobriety test. And then they might say, well, if that's the case, you're going to lose your license temporarily, or we're going to tell the DMV. Don't worry about that right now. That's a tactic they use to bully you into consenting to doing a test that you might lose, mm-hmm. and giving them enough rope for you to hang yourself. Don't consent to a field sobriety test. Mm-hmm. You can be polite. I would not tell you not to get out of the car. I think it's okay to get out of the car if they ask you to get out of the car, but they might start trying to move you into field sobriety tests. Say, not Your Honor, excuse me.
Yeah.
Officer, I'd prefer, I decline to do any field sobriety tests. Now in South Carolina and a lot of places, next they're going to take you to the police station, and they might do a breathalyzer, not on site, but in the station. They'll read you a thing. They'll say, you're going to sit here for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, and then I'm going to give you this thing, and you're going to blow on it. And you just decline. You decline to blow. Again, the science is sort of strange. I have had a case recently where a guy blew well under the legal limit, and then the cops just decided to charge him with DUI anyway, saying they thought they smelled marijuana, even though they didn't find any marijuana around it. So don't blow. And if they say, if they ask to search your car, say no. Now, listen, they might search your car anyway. They might say they had probable cause. Newsflash, sometimes they didn't really have probable cause, mm-hmm. and that's a search. It might be an illegal search that I might even be able to get thrown out.
Yeah.
But don't consent. And if they find something and say, is this your weed or is this your whatever, just don't acknowledge it. If it is, well, first of all, it might not be. You might have people riding it with you. It might be your cousin's car, your sibling's car, mm-hmm. your wife's car, husband's car. But don't say, yes, that's mine. Don't acknowledge, don't confess, because sometimes there might be a way to protect your rights. There might be a way to protect your rights and deal with those charges that you don't know. People think, oh, they found something in the trunk, I'm sunk. Mm-hmm. I mean, that runs unintentionally.
Because I've heard of situations. I recently was talking with an artist of ours who was telling us her car got pulled over, her band, and they were rifling through her stuff, and they found THC gummies that they bought in one state, and they're like, oh, you're not allowed to have these in this state, and they gave them a whole bunch of grief, and it seemed like stuff was really in the air for a while for them. Would her best recourse have been to just never consent to the search, to never, because it seemed very fishy when the story started, that's like, we've been pulled over before because they thought, because we had 9 guys in the van, they were like, 9 guys in the van because you have a full band, you have girlfriends, and you have merch people and stuff. They thought we were assholers.
Right.
And then they're like, no, musicians, we're like driving, like, oh, why didn't you get a hotel? I was like, do you think we get paid well enough for a hotel for 9 people?
A lot of law enforcement types, not all of them, but they assume if you're living what they think of as an unconventional lifestyle, which I guess 9 people, artists in a van, is strange to them. They assume, they don't think you're doing Bible verses back there,
Right? Yeah.
I mean, you very well might be. You might be in a Christian rock cruise, or some kind of traveling, evangelical.
I should have thought of that at the time.
Oh yeah. Well, one time we were shooting a video in a grocery store, not legal, and I mean it wasn't. This isn't a legal story, is what I'm saying. Yeah. And then they came in, and the camera guy said, "Oh yeah." To the manager, he said, "Oh yeah, we're shooting a video for our youth group." Now, to be fair, the manager was suspicious, and my friend Spencer did have a full Wolfman outfit on. He was sniffing through the meat section, so I can't really be. But the youth group was great. Now, I'm not telling you to lie to police officers. That wasn't a legal anecdote. But you don't have to answer. Now, be polite. Say I prefer. At some point, when the questions become uncomfortable or you're afraid the answers are incriminating, I want you to say, I'd prefer not to answer any other questions till I have an attorney present. And they might try and press you. Don't fall for it. Just, take it. Just because they take you to the police station, just because you even maybe do a brief night in jail, does not mean that you're in trouble. Does not mean you're going to have a criminal record forever. You tough it out, keep your mouth shut, and that's usually the best advice sort of you can get.
Yeah.
So, you're the host. I didn't mean to go.
Oh, no. I think this is excellent. This is excellent because so you had mentioned several different scenarios that the rocker will run into. The pullover stop is the classic one.
Yeah.
What are some others that as musicians and as being a musician yourself, but also musician adjacent in your day-to-day?
Well, I've definitely seen I've seen musicians sort of take up the street afterwards. I've seen them get breach of peace, maybe after a rowdy show. I've seen people try and say obscenity. Maybe there was a guy, a really great guy, was like, I didn't handle the case, but it was from where he ran out the street in his underwear after the gig, and the police just didn't like it. And that was really good. Frequently, police will, and I'm not saying all of them, but frequently they'll just, especially the young, experienced ones, it's something they don't particularly like, and so they shoot first, ask questions later. I mean, figuratively, I'm not saying they shot it necessarily, but they'll arrest him and then try and find a charge. I see
in the name of order, like I'm here to keep order.
Right. Now, keep in mind, the first level of the first entry point of the criminal justice system is just on the street with the police officer. You can break laws. An officer might say, I don't really care about this. And you might end up with a friendly one who'll even give you a ride home or put you in a cab. I've seen that happen many times. But that's sort of where the rubber first meets the road. After the police officer, gives charges or you're arrested or you're ticketed, then it ends up going to the courts, potentially a prosecutor. That's when you need to get a lawyer. When in doubt, if you think you need a lawyer, you should get a lawyer. And if you live in the United States, you can get a court-appointed lawyer if you can't afford one.
Yeah. It's excellent, man.
Well, yeah, a lot of times, but keep in mind, just because you might be stopped and it might not even be appropriate, or they might be overreaching, that doesn't mean you should be rude to them. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can do it. There's a case called In Re Jeremiah that says you can basically, and another one that came to the state Supreme Court recently that basically said you can criticize an officer and tell him you don't like what he's doing. You can tell him he stinks. You can use profanity, but even if that gets thrown out later, again, you might beat the rep, but you won't beat the ride. I would just say, when in doubt, don't get involved with too much friction.
Yeah. That's one thing I can't help but notice when I see a lot of footage on social media of police interactions. I can't help but think, is there a finer line here than this is two-part questions on this. Is there a finer line than sort of the confrontational, am I being detained, kind of thing that I think sort of agitates suspicion out of people, but also it's like it's within your rights versus also, but the second part of the question I wanted to ask about is filming police officers in these processes. I mean, you've mentioned the body cam thing has been really dramatically changing things because people see this, but also we've had numerous cases of things happen in this country. George Floyd is the biggest example, where the police report's so dramatically different from what we could see on video. And if that video wasn't there, the only evidence of what would have happened there was the police report.
Right.
And so what are some of the rules or things musicians might want to know about in terms of, are they allowed to record? Are your bandmates allowed to record an interaction? What are steps that they can do to perfect themselves?
Right. Well, so, I think, I definitely think being polite doesn't mean I don't think you should stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
You should. Some of the guys online are maybe a little unnecessarily confrontational. Some of them are the right amount of confrontational. Every case is different. Every situation is different. I think, a lot of the people that had videotape things were sort of heroes. And then, of course, there was sort of the random people that want to put the videotape on just to pick a fight. But I think they're in the minority. I don't really think that's the case. I think, if someone is in a position to record an interaction that they think is going south, you know what I mean? Or if they want to record it, you have a right to, for the most part. Now, people say you can't record, and they'll try and take phones and things like that, but not all the time. I wouldn't, if you notify them you're recording, I wouldn't do it as a dare or a tone. I would just say, I'm recording this interaction.
Yeah.
Let me say this, though. Let your lawyer fight with them later. Let me fight with them. You be the nice guy. You know why? One, if you tweak them the wrong way, they might throw more charges on you. They might take you in when they didn't have to take you in. They might just want to be a jerk. Two, if you're on camera, you want to look polite or straightforward. You just don't want to look like an asshole. That's all I'm saying. Don't be an asshole on camera. You can be firm and you can protect your rights without being an asshole. And that might end up in front of a jury or a judge or something like that. I would let me fight. Let me be the asshole for you when it's necessary later.
Yeah.
That
you can be designated in that role, in that scenario, in that arena. But in the arena of the car and the arena of that first stop, you want to present yourself as agreeably as possible.
Right. You don't have to, give the officers everything they want, but be polite, give them your driver's license, I would, when things get uncomfortable or they get pushy, you can say, I would like a lawyer present before I do anything else here. And then that might make them upset, and if they respond negatively, that's just because, there's nothing else, sort of they can do. But let me just put it this way, a large percentage of conflicts with police, not all, a large percentage of conflicts with police can be prevented if you're just polite and professional to start with. That doesn't mean cede your rights. Doesn't mean tell them everything that's in your car. Doesn't mean let them search you. Doesn't mean consent to blow or do field tests if you're pulled for DUI. But later, I can tell you this, when I defend somebody for a DUI, it's a lot easier for me to win or get it dismissed if the guy or girl is nice on camera.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And is, ultimately professional.
All right. So we are going to do a little bit of a lightning round here. Actually, no, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about on the thing, but now all of a sudden I'm suddenly blanking, I'm suddenly blanking for a second. There was something else I wanted to ask about, but I think you answered it really well with I think we hit an excellent stopping point with you saying, let me be the asshole.
Let your lawyer be the warrior. Let your lawyer be the asshole. I mean, listen, if you were in a family court situation, which I try to avoid family court, you let your lawyer fight it out for you. You don't send angry texts to your ex when they're being mean to you, right? You let a cop or an ex, let them be rude and inappropriate, and you handle it with class, and then let your lawyer fight it out later for you.
Oh, yeah. Now I remember what it was I wanted to talk about. We'll let Ben do some editing because that's awesome too, and we'll chop this up. So I once was at a late night dinner with I once was at a dinner with a friend and their partner who was a state patrolman, and the state patrolman showed me a whole bunch of car footage that he showed, and I think he was very much enjoying this. Whereas meanwhile, I'm watching this and I'm kind of like getting deeply uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't know if I should be seeing this stuff. And also I was deeply uncomfortable because he was just so incredibly proud of some of the manipulative stuff that he was able to pull over on people, young woman isn't consenting to things, and he's saying I knew a woman like you who drove around and hit a kid, and stuff like that. He was saying these kind of things. But what are some of the manipulative traps that people run into in these kinds of stops or these kind of interactions?
Well,
that you would advise people to just find a way to not get sucked into.
J- remember, it's their job to arrest people. It's their job to put people in bail. Okay. Now, again, there's some nice folks in law enforcement. A lot of them are very reasonable. A lot of people give people second chances and they pull them over and stuff. But the more they engage with you, the more likely it is that they want something from you, and that thing is maybe information or enough rope for you to sort of hang yourself. Now, if you're being questioned, especially by an investigator, like maybe there was a property crime or a violent crime or something somewhere, and they take you in a room and they start talking to you, you'll see people say, oh, well, I just want to hear your side of it. Mm-hmm. Or they'll say, I just need more information. But once they have you in, if you don't have a lawyer, you could be in trouble. Now, I have people call me all the time and they say, I'm accused of this. And I evaluate that it is okay for them to talk to law enforcement, but I go with them so that I know that we're in a controlled environment and I know what they're saying and it's not going to hurt them.
Yeah.
With younger people especially, they'll say, your mom is so sad. Your mom is good. You need to apologize to your mom for stealing from that store or robbing that store or something. They manipulate you with family. They might start talking about your kids. They might say, oh, I want you got to tell me, you got to cooperate with me and tell me what's going wrong if this is more serious crime. So that I want to help you. I want to help you. Let your lawyer negotiate help. A confession does not help you. It almost always gives them more evidence to charge you with. So don't listen to things like, hey, I'm trying to help you. Or if they start talking about, oh, your family or your friends, or I want to keep you out of jail. Let a lawyer evaluate that. Or even if you end up having to be briefly, or be arrested and detained briefly, a lawyer will work quite possibly to bond you out, to take care of things, maybe even get certain charges dismissed, if not reduced.
Yeah.
But if you give them everything they're looking for, just remember this. I'm not saying there aren't law enforcement people that are nice or care out there, but their job is to fight crime.
Yeah. And they are statistically rewarded then by number of arrests, number of convictions, clearance rate.
And they live and listen, a lot of their jobs are dangerous. A lot of times they are dealing with people in violent crimes in violent neighborhoods. A lot of those officers say, hey, this kid, this long-haired, or this guy, or this guy who looks,
this is a very bad person.
They
bad
deal with real people. Yeah. But that said, a lot with some types of people, that some personalities in law enforcement, there's that saying, whenever you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Mm-hmm.
There are some personalities you'll find there, just like you'll find some personalities in the band that are assholes and dictators, and then some are easygoing, and some are cooperative, and some are team players. Any occupation, this goes for lawyers too. Any occupation, you're going to find sort of good and bad. But I'm here. I want you to be protected against overreach of the state or the government and county or the city.
Excellent. So I think that's an excellent point to wrap up on this side of the topic. Thank you so much for coming by, Rhodes. We're going to do our lightning round.
All right.
Fun questions with the cards. And we'll see what our followers on social media and email people have sent us that they want to know about. I'll ask a question of the card, and then you can ask a question of the next card of me if it's relevant. Are you nice to the court reporter?
Yes, absolutely. They are very hardworking, usually women in South Carolina, but I've known male court reporters too that were nice and friends, and they usually are patient, and there's a lot of work involved in that. So, but the number one things you can do as a lawyer to be nice to the court reporter is, well, certainly smile, but. Sorry, I'm not trying to. I can smile. I'm not a young woman that people are telling to smile. I'm opposed to that.
Yeah.
But I try to smile with everybody in sort of that kind of interaction, just to send a signal. I'm here. I want to work with you. So I'm polite to the court reporters, and I pay attention if they need something. They might want me to spell my client's name, and I slow down when I talk when they ask me to. That's one of the nicest things you can do for a court reporter is. Make sure you're not speaking too fast, which is hard for me sometimes, and don't talk over each other. In depositions or in court, a lot of times the poor court reporters are it's hard to type crosstalk into a transcript.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent. Well,
Wonderful folks. Oh, is there?
yeah, you asked me
Okay,
next
great,
question,
great.
so.
At what point does a cloned pedal become copyright infringement? Ooh, I've wondered this myself.
You know, I've thought about this, and here's my best answer on this, which is when you are violating the trade dress and appearance and overall, I would say the aesthetic gestalt of another product is when that really, especially when you take the names. I think this has been relevant recently because there's a case involving Klon, the Klon Centaur, and then Behringer today announced that they are changing the name. They were putting out a pedal called the Centaur that physically resembled the old Klon, and now it is the Centaura. I do not know if that's going to be enough latitude for the court proceedings to continue, but I thought that was an interesting case.
Yeah, because it seems pretty common practice now for people to have Centaur clones, right? I mean, isn't that one of the most famous clone pedals now?
Oh my gosh, I think it might be even more than the Tube Screamer now.
Yeah,
You know, and that is just such a thing that people have. And it's one of these things that I find personally a little disappointing or frustrating because knowing how the sausage gets made, I can say with real certainty, having seen the work, that almost every designer who has made a clone, there's no way in a million years they would have made that sound without cloning it. If that's the best way to describe it. It's like there's no way they would have gotten those filters. There's no way they would have done the double gang pot. There's nothing in their other work that tells me they would have reached this same outcome without cloning it. So if that is the way it is, then at least admit you have a clone or a derivation. I think there are derivations that have been interesting, or where people started with the foundational idea of the circuit and then moved on to other things, or they tried to just achieve a similar kind of outcome from more conventional amplification and equalization. But when I see a clone, there are very specific kind of giveaways in the schematic that you're like, okay, there's no way you would have copied that homework.
right. Well,
You know?
a tube screamer is just sort of it's sort of common vernacular now. This is my take on a tube screamer, right? Like this is a Klon is of course way more specific, but of course I guess tube screamers when they first came out, they were, they weren't as ubiquitous, right?
Right.
It's something to keep watching. I'll have to do some research on
Yeah.
that and maybe come back and talk about homage and borrowing versus right copyright infringement. That's a great. Yeah.
But it's also wild when you look back even at effects pedals. I've been with Josh Scott, and I pulled a tray out that had his office, and I went, oh my gosh, what are all these old crazy pedals like you have? I was laughing because it was all stuff I'd seen in guitar mags in the 80s. They were like Washburn pedals and PV pedals and Nady pedals and DiMarzio pedals and things, and there's just a mess of just 80s-ish stuff, right? And Josh goes, oh yeah, those are all rats.
That's funny.
It was just one of these funny moments. You're like, oh, there was an era. And it's funny to me going back and grabbing a lot of classic stuff. We're looking at a bunch of compressors right now. We're realizing how much stuff is Dynacomps.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh my gosh. Like, it not only did they bias it the same as a Dynacomp, but they biased it using the exact same resistor values as a Dynacomp. So it's not like they didn't go 27 divided by 9 is 3. They went 9 divided by 3 is 3. Like, just to keep the goal was to get to 3, and they copied the numerator and denominators as well. So it is it's interesting to see. All right, next question. How do you manage work guitar life balance?
Man, that's great. So a lot of me wanted to be a professional musician when I was younger. I went to College of Charleston, then I played music there, and then when I got out, I goofed off while I was applying to law school, played in bands and everything. Then I went to law school, and the first year of law school, I barely picked up my guitar, which is so crazy to imagine now. I'd pick it up every once in a while, and you're scared. It's like being in like an academic boot camp.
I had the same thing at business school. Like, mine just was underneath my bed for a year.
Oh, yeah, which now I can't even imagine.
Crazy.
It's like I became a vegetarian or something. It was just such a dramatic change.
Yep.
But what I try and do is I can say at my home office is where I keep all my guitars and stuff. And I've thought about keeping one in my regular office, but I haven't done it as of yet. I like it. One of the things I like to do is I'll work for, a few hours and maybe I'm waiting for something to download or I need a break and I'll pick up guitar and I'll noodle on something, or maybe there's some lick I'm trying to like pick up. And I like to take little breaks, brain breaks, and then pick it up for a little while. And I think that, and then of course I play in a band with some guys. We're essentially dad rockers now because we all have children and we're middle aged.
It's awesome.
Hey, I love it now. I love dead rock.
I'm so jealous.
Oh yeah. But we just make ourselves practice. The best way to make your band good, right, is to set a gig. I don't care where it is, what time it is.
I like this.
If you think, oh man, are we going to break in our new bass player, or are we going to start to learn some songs? You put a calendar, a date on the calendar. I don't care if you only know like 3 songs. You're going to learn those 3 songs and a few more, and it forces you to work. So I would say this about a lot of things in life. If you want to write a book, if you want your band to play gigs, set the gig, and it forces you to have a practice that week.
Hell of an answer.
Yeah.
Hell of an answer. Good stuff. So, all right, you're up.
All right, I get to ask you the fun ones. What is the most ridiculous thing you've defended in court? Okay, well
That's right for you.
God, that's great. Let me see. It's really, gosh, that's a whole, man, you're talking almost 2 decades worth of stuff. I will. Okay. Well, the first thing I can think of course, I'm going to think of a lot better ones after this. But there was a guy who kept stealing Vienna sausages from or Vienna sausage. I always thought it was Vienna sausages from the grocery store, and the solicitor, which is what we call a prosecutor in South Carolina, was so upset. And I went to the judge. I said, "Judge, this guy did 2 weeks in jail. I think it's punishment enough that he had to eat these sausages." And the judge agreed with me and gave him time served. And
That's awesome.
and let him go home. I guess the judge was a health freak. But, there are all sorts of weird things. I've gotten, people accused of peeping in other people's rooms. We've had trials over that. We've had...
Your Honor, that's just foreplay.
I was, just weird. People get charged, and then when the state says, I want this person to go to prison, you're left no choice but to sort of go to trial and fight it.
Mm-hmm.
God, man, I might have to come back to that because I'm really on the spot. There are a lot of crazy murder cases and assault cases, and I had one where a guy was being intimidated by this young guy with a gun, and he was threatening him, and he ended up shooting him in self-defense, and it was a real wild thing. And we got a not guilty for him, but he sat in jail for 2 years. Oof. First. So that was not fun, ridiculous, but he was a good guy, a good middle-aged guy, and the prosecution at that time, they just weren't looking at that case through the right lens.
Do you think they get sunk cost situations where like they've spent so much time prosecuting, they just have to send this to the end?
I think, the older prosecutors in my experience are a lot of times the easier to deal with because, and I'm sure defense lawyers are the same way, because they can separate the big things from the small things.
Yeah.
And they're not trying to like be Batman coming right out of law school. Also, they also can with the benefit of experience, you can evaluate whether this case is good or bad, or whether you need to compromise and plead it out or that kind of thing. I think there are times, and listen, this can happen on my side. I can love a client so much or believe in that case so much that I might be, blind to sort of some problems with the case or how the jury might perceive it. It can happen to everyone. So, advice if you want to be a lawyer, don't fall in love with your facts. This goes straight, goes for business and other professions too that are adversarial. Try and look at it from your opponent's point of view. You got to try and look at it from your opponent's point of view and size up how strong your case is and not.
Excellent. Let me ask one. How many paces can you identify a blues lawyer?
How many paces?
Yeah, how far away can you?
That's so funny. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, I love the blues lawyer memes and stuff. A lot of those guys.
There's a good Instagram page that
Oh yeah. I mean, basically, for those who don't know, and I'm sure this crowd, the blues lawyer is kind of like the guy that is the hobbyist who has really expensive, untouched, polished stuff. And just no grit, no style, no teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a battle of the bands for some doctors one time. No, it's easy for me to make fun of them. And the guy I knew was just incredible. And then everybody else in the band, they had like the top model of like Ultra Strats or the top model Murphy Labs, sort of Les Pauls, and they had like perfect giant amps. These are like 45-year-old guys playing like a ballroom. They didn't need like stacks. Immaculate. Joe Scarborough is a blues lawyer. I'm sorry, that guy is he's such a blowhard when it comes to music. He's got a beautiful jazz master, and he tries to perform Elvis Costello, and he doesn't know his equipment. It's nice to have
Kevin O'Leary is a blues lawyer.
They're not real. And I took an easy way in a lot of ways. I went to school. I've got a white collar job. I love it. And I love playing music, but I did my time in the smoky bar rooms, and I hung out with musicians, and authenticity matters.
5 to a minivan full of gear.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've slept on so many couches all through school and everything too. Even after, when I was like a young public defender. I guess what I'm saying is, you can tell the guy that's like too polished. And I know I'm dressed like
I love it.
I'm dressed like a Lansing catalog today because this is a lawyer type talk. But how many paces? I'd say you could maybe 15 paces.
About 15 paces.
You can identify the voice. But that said, sometimes I love those guys. You're sitting around with the guy that doesn't, a lot of them, they're fun to play music with. It's the ones that are jerks and think they're awesome. It's like all guitar players.
Yeah.
When somebody's hype or self-reverence or ego outstretches like how actually good they are, that's when they're annoying, right? Yeah. And when if somebody is like too self-serious, or if somebody's so into gear and they're snobs and they're putting on other people's, those guys are usually I don't know. So, but
yeah, it becomes difficult.
Lawyers,
I can be fine with some blues lawyers.
Yeah, I know
some Porch Princess gear.
Yeah,
like that.
Porch Princess.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of the truck that's never gone, the fancy truck that's never gone off road. They have Porch Princess gear.
Yeah, it's only the ones that are attitudes that want to tell you. It's like the guys. I don't know. You can smell a phony a mile away, right? Yeah. You can, and some of them are if some of them are collectors or they just like nice stuff. By all means, keep Fender and Gibson and the boutique guys in business by buying the expensive stuff.
Yep.
Which is, I got expensive stuff I couldn't afford till later for sure. Yeah.
All right, you're up.
Okay. No, and apologies to any blues lawyers because I know plenty. What is the most egregious guitar crime? What is the most egregious guitar crime? Oh God.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I feel like I know him and I just can't. This is such a good question. Okay.
May I put my vote in?
Yeah, you first, because that'll probably
asking to sit in. Like you're a guy in the audience and a band is playing and you walk up and you want to play.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I think that's the most. First off, singers don't do that. Drummers don't do that. Bass players don't do that. Keyboarders don't do that. But you always could tell.
Yeah.
But whenever it's happened, it's a guitar player and they're like, I ripped, dude. Let me play. And then they were like wanting you to play some song and they want to play guitar.
I didn't know wins.
Like to me, that is the most egregious, unsolicited, uninvited. I want to sit in.
You know what? I think that's a good one. And it goes
total stranger.
Some singers do that too, men, women, but they're like sort of less annoying. I will say, relating to that, I think another egregious guitar crime is, let's say it is an open mic thing and you bring in just like tons of equipment.
Oh my God!
You're bringing it like I remember. There's my buddy Brian, a drummer, told the story where like they were just these old blues guys, like these legit guys were awesome, and they were just playing. And then like a young shredder came in with like the biggest pedal board ever and wanted his amp and all this kind of stuff. And then the old guy's just like, yeah, get that shit out of here. and again, everybody loves their gear, but if you really are in a situation where you're welcome to spontaneously do it, don't let everybody else deal with your maintenance or your sound.
Yep.
Try to just do with what you got right there. If you are lucky enough to be invited for a sit-in, don't be a diva about it. Yep. You're on their equipment, their terms, their court, their rules.
Having been invited to sit in with bands before and play and even like trade leads and stuff with somebody who was a headliner, I always followed the rules that I once read Steve Morse said, which is assume you're only going to be there for that one song.
Yes, and get out.
Yeah, and get out. And literally, as I'm unplugging the amp, the guy is like, hey, stick around for one more. Yeah. Do you know this?
Isn't that the way to go?
And it's like, that's the way to go. But I never assumed I was supposed to be there any longer than that one song.
Yeah, if you're asked to play, great. Don't volunteer. Don't try and volunteer yourself. Yes. This is great. I love it.
What are 3 things you'd like to make illegal?
Ooh, okay. Honestly, I think...
Enforcing the emoluments clause.
Oh, my God. Things that are already legal.
You're right.
Well, number one, I think even here in South Carolina, and I would like to see it happen nationally, I think we need to decriminalize marijuana. We need to legalize it, not just because it's not as dangerous. There are medical benefits, cancer patients, etc. But let's tax the hell out of it. Let's legalize marijuana, tax the shit out of it in our state. Work on our roads or schools, whatever, because people will buy it, and your state or community might become a tourist destination. It's already becoming so normalized now, which, by the way, if you're driving your car and you do have marijuana or gummies or whatever, call me if you have any other specific questions. Rhodes Bailey at rhodesbaileylaw.com. But in South Carolina, possession with intent to distribute is anything over an ounce or about 28 grams.
Oh, there's that threshold.
There's a whole long list. I'm just saying marijuana has really been so normalized. I know people now in sort of the soccer mom type neighborhoods that never touched marijuana when they were in college, but now it's become so normalized. You've got the sort of the fake marijuana like D8s and things that are usually they're illegal, but you've got people getting them from their friends in other states or their trips to Vegas. It's become normalized. We need to just go ahead and decriminalize it. However, do not carry anything. I'm not telling you to ever carry drugs and break the law, but if you're caught with an ounce or more, or over an ounce, or about 28 grams, they can charge you with distributing, which is stupid, but it's an inference. That doesn't mean you would be convicted of that, but that's a felony, and that's much more serious. Sorry, I had to go back to that.
I love
it. Decriminalize marijuana. It's not a hard drug. I guess I'd have to say, gosh, I don't know, man. Legal. I think. Well, now we're seeing some bad Supreme Court cases. We're seeing things like, I definitely don't like the treatment of hormones and things for trans kids is an issue right now. The Supreme Court just upheld that states can ban it. I think it's a complicated issue between parents, kids, and doctors. And I don't like to see, I do not like to see under any circumstances the government weighing in on medical decisions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring back something that my number 3 is what used to be legal, which was women to make their own decisions about their bodies, but now in certain states not. So this really wasn't that fun a conversation. It was more me being upset about the setbacks of the courts. But one, legalize marijuana and make money off of it. 2, make money that we can benefit our community, our economies, especially in our great state of South Carolina. 2, basically codify Roe v. Wade. I want to see the old Roe v. Wade rules federally codified by Congress, the House and the Senate, and signed by the next president. And then 3, I just don't want to see, it's a complicated issue because when kids are getting hormones or getting things suppressed, I'm not a physician, and that's why the physicians need to be making decisions and with families and not the government. Because here's the thing, state Jimmy Joe, schmuck in the legislature in these conservative states, they don't care about the kids. They're just trying to send messages and fight culture wars. Yeah. So those are my 3 things.
This is vice and virtue signaling.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really. Yeah, I mean, it's it's all complicated. I get it, but that's why some idiot in the legislature who definitely is not medically educated should be the one making the decisions. Yeah.
Next question.
Is this with me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good or bad idea? DIY in-ground backyard pool.
That's a terrible idea. That's a terrible idea. I feel like, what's the show? English Teacher has a subplot where the guy's trying to do that. Like where the wife, the friend and her husband's trying to DIY it.
I remember
it's a terrible idea.
And I saw that show. English Teacher was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Although we liked it at the time. The other day, Erin and I were streaming through it. She goes, "Have we seen this English Teacher show?" It's like, yeah, we watched the entire season. So even though it was good, I guess it didn't stick.
In my brain, I got even though they're very different shows, I got English Teacher and Abbott Elementary confused in my brain.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. Well, they're similar. I will say though, DIY swimming pool, Encino Man, classic kids. If you haven't seen it yet, Encino Man, where Sean Astin, soon to be what Frodo's buddy Sam or whatever. I can't believe I actually know that.
Yep.
And now you got a lot of nerd
Rudy.
credibility.
Yep.
And Rudy. And of course, Mikey and the Goonies, the most important role. So he tries to watch Encino Man, so good, arguably best early '90s movie. He's trying to like be popular, so he's with a shovel digging through bad dirt and roots in the back of his, so that they could have a big party with this pool, and it's just like it's awful and hilarious.
I've seen friends try to do stuff like the DIY backyard pool, and they rent a bobcat and all this stuff, and I'm just like, and they cause all this trouble, and they dig, and all of a sudden they break some line of something that they shouldn't have because they didn't call. Was it 811 in some places will tell you where the lines are and things, and it's just like, man, you really like. There's some things that there's a good reason they're professionals.
I don't even want to DIY guitar stuff that theoretically I should be able to do. I usually harass Philippe and Ben because you know what you're doing. I'm terrified.
Yeah, some of it. Yeah. That's
Don't DIY your legal stuff either.
Yeah.
But,
all right. I think. Am I up or you up? I think I'm up. Okay.
Yeah.
In a YouTube video, can I legally play a few bars of someone else's music when demoing a pedal? You know, that's a real. I think the understanding is. Wow, that's a good question. I don't know the rules.
Well, I heard about this with podcasts about playing actual music.
Yes.
I've heard that there's fair. I don't, and again, I wasn't prepared to, speak on this or advise on this today. But a lot of times it's about how much you play.
Yeah.
Like, are you getting like a full stream of a song? More or less from playing it.
Yeah. Or are you just playing the riff? Because every YouTube guy has been used to doing riffs.
I think that, okay, well, first of all, here's my question. What are you using the YouTube video for, right? Are you, okay, can I legally play a few bars of someone else's music when demoing a pedal? You mean on your guitar? You're trying to play it yourself, right? You're not saying you want to play the track of AC/DC. You're trying to show the riff. I mean, if you're not allowed to do that to demo a pedal, then you've got, there are millions of YouTube videos that show you how to play guitars and instructional videos.
Yeah.
I think let me put it this way, I would think they'd be more likely to come after you if you were making money off of the video. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like if you were making money off of views, I think you're potentially in more of a situation where they might want to come after you. But I feel like the guitar sphere. Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
It feels like it should be. The guitar, I feel like the guitar sphere sees it as fair use.
Yes. That's the thing. I think there's a fair use component to this.
Yeah. You're not trying to make money or pass off as your own. Now, a lot of times when they're trying to sell something, they'll say, here's a song that sounds like AC/DC, but they're very clearly trying to sell these big things
Yeah. All right.
That's a good one, man. These are great questions. Who is your favorite guitarist, and which of your pedals would you most like to give them? Oh, this is great. You should obviously answer this one.
Okay. Oh my God. So I'm gonna say with my first impulse, the first guitarist that made me think like this is a guitar, this is something I'm interested in, this is a guitarist. I like how these guitars sound. Is David Gilmour. And if I could give them a Kilobyte 2000, I would absolutely give them a Kilobyte 2000 and say, this is the pedal that sounds more like the most like Run Like Hell than anything I've ever heard. Supposedly that's supposed to sound like Run Like Hell. Because one thing that gets me with Run Like Hell by Pink Floyd on the Wall, and it's like that guitar part, people think about like the kind of the constant eighth note kind of thing that's going, but the chordal stabs that he does in the beginning of the tune just sounds so awesome. And I always hear people, even when I saw Pink Floyd live, I'm like, it doesn't sound quite the same because the repeats have to be dirtied. And the repeats are really dirtied in the Kilobyte 2000 where there's some modulation, some dirtiness, and there's some scatter to them that I think is the stuff that I think people really loved in stuff like an Echoplex. when they had an Echoplex that the tapes got dirty and things degraded and the machine heads weren't lined up perfect. That's what I think they loved. And I think frequently we've gotten obsessed with recreating, trying to recreate the means, but not the outcome. Mm-hmm. And I think the outcome is something that I find when I plug into our Kill by 2000, I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted for this thing, and I'd love to show something like that to David Gilmour. Like, I'd just say, like, hey, just take it as a thank you for inspiring, for me now nearly 45 years of loving music. I think that would be what matters. Now, he doesn't need any more gear. In fact, he auctioned off like so much gear, right? Millions of dollars worth of gear. So he doesn't need any more pedals or anything like that. But that would be almost like my way of saying, thank you so much for inspiring our work. And for inspiring the work of so many musicians, artists, gear makers, creatives, just as a thank you. Just because that was, I think, the first time. It was funny. I think I was like 7 or 8 years old, and MTV suddenly started doing, because MTV was just trying to fill content.
Yeah.
In the early years, MTV was doing a whole bunch of stuff on the Final Cut, which Final Cut is a critically derided end to Pink Floyd's legacy.
I think Roger Waters called it, a decent forgery, or a decent attempt at a forgery, since he wasn't with him anymore.
No, he was.
Oh, was he in the Final Cut?
He's the final.
What was the one?
We call it momentary
lapse of reason.
Yeah, it's momentary lapse of reason.
Right, that's great.
Right?
I got that wrong. A decent forgery.
Forgery. And I sympathize with Roger Waters saying this stuff because
they snipe each other. They're rough with each other.
But there's also an element of post Roger Waters Pink Floyd that is almost indistinguishable from David Gilmour solo records.
Well, and Gilmour's first solo record is so good.
The About Face stuff and the one before that.
Gilmour and Waters, in a way, they have sort of a Lennon-McCartney dynamic in that one is the sweeter, smoother one, and then one is the edgier, gnarlier one.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, they balance, Gilmour's this model-esque man. He has amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
And Roger Waters is a more kind of funky, weird guy, and he almost kind of has this ogre-y, heavy-footed vibe. I like Roger Waters too.
And Roger Waters is like a principal songwriter, but so much of the songs that we associate with Pink Floyd are sung by Gilmour.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it is a very difficult dynamic. For me, I just remember as a kid, MTV was doing all this stuff about the Final Cut. I don't know if they were just reproducing promo stuff that Pink Floyd's label had put together. There's a whole bunch of video footage, a whole bunch of different things. And it's not even that good of a Floyd album, but I just remember just being like, this guitar playing is so good.
He really invented that sort of thing. It's easy for us growing up with where Pink Floyd was just going to be on classic rock radio anyway.
Yeah.
But that sort of smooth, like almost ambient, shredding, but softly and silk, and had power, but it had finesse and sensuality. Now everybody, it's just weird to think he was kind of the first guy doing something like that.
Yes.
And now it's ubiquitous.
Yep.
I would want to give, first, I'm a big Kilobyte fan. I have the original Kilobyte, so I don't have a 2000 yet, but I would really want to give it to some percussive players, because I really love the like you're talking about, the slap back, the delay trails when you can have some extra grit. I'd love to see like a Dave Davies do it on a later Kinks record. Just because when you pop that percussion playing, honestly, I feel like you could get some cool stuff out of that Keith Richards-esque style. That natural, that sort of slap back, that's a dirtier, that has a little extra grit and dirt to it. But the Kilobyte's always been one of my very favorites of your pedals.
Man, I'm going to lose all my cred with Stones fans like you as well. I love Undercover of the Night. Like da-da-da-da-down, and he's got the delay going. Man, like that's that percussive thing with his playing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, this is awesome. That was like, that might have been that, and like some of the stuff.
You're not going to lose any cred.
I was of the age where your first exposure to the Stones is going to be Start Me Up.
Yeah.
And it's going to be maybe Miss You, and then it's going to be Undercover of the Night. And that's like, those are the first three things that you're going to hear from the Stones. You're not going to hear Exile on Main Street until you're older. You're not going to hear the early stuff until you're older. But I was of an age as a kid, and And even then, I recognized these guys are cool, and this is awesome.
Yeah, Richards was a really pretty good fan in the Exile days of trying to get reverb in the studio just by angling things a certain way. You know what I mean? So he was pretty simplistic on that stuff, but very primitive in a lot of ways. But if you put like the right kind of, you put a complicated pedal idea, but you put it with the right simple playing, it can do amazing shit.
Yeah. One of the biggest honors for us ever was Andy Summers bought Andy Summers bought a Kilobyte and a Meteor.
Oh my God.
And it was just one of the most delightful, like, it just like,
I can't even imagine.
I don't even know if he's used them. I don't know if they're just sitting in a milk crate somewhere in the studio, but it just was like, for me, it was just like, oh my God, it's so good.
He's the man.
It did.
He's absolutely, and that guy, he was like in his 40s playing with the Police in the 80s. Like he was like of the 60s era guy, but then he was like the happening guitar player of the 80s, and he was like a little older than them.
Yeah.
Just great. And then and I'm a huge Stuart Copeland fan too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you for having me,
Man,
It was
thank
a
you
real
so much for
pleasure.
being
Real
here.
pleasure. Yeah.
And thank y'all for enjoying this. We hope you watch this on video. We hope you enjoy it in your car, enjoy it in your listens. We hope we've made a little time go by for you. And again, be polite, but you do not have to consent to anything you're not comfortable with.
Right. If you have questions, feel free to give me a call. Rhodes Bailey that's RHODES Bailey, BAILEY it's Rhodes Bailey Law. So,
Yeah. Rhodes like Rhodes Scholar, not spelled like Randy Rhodes. RHODES.
That's right. Or Rhodes Piano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. It was a real pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.